Hey guys, so today is the last day of August, therefore it is time for my August wrap up. This month I have read 21 books, which is actually very surprising for me because I feel like I actually have not read that much. This month has been really long, but I feel like I've been working a lot and I haven't had a lot of time to read, so it's really surprising to me actually that I have read this much. But yeah, basically we're just going to get right into it. I'm probably going to be doing like I did in my last wrap-up TBR, whatever it was, where I just looked at my Goodreads because I actually do not have most of the physical copies. I either read them on my Kindle or I read like a physical library book copy, and I don't have it anymore. So yeah, let's just jump into this video, but right now I have to go get my cats because they're crying. The first book that I read this month was The Chocolate Touch by Patrick Skin Catling. This book is about a little boy who loves chocolate. It's like a children's book, and it's really short, but I just wanted to reread it because it was one of my childhood favorites. And it's about this little boy who really loves chocolate, like a lot, and he just like won't eat anything else. He's just like loves chocolate a lot, and he's basically just like a little brat who will not eat his meals and whatever. So one day he goes to a like chocolate shop and he buys chocolate, and then the next day he wakes up and everything tastes like chocolate. Water, toothpaste, literally everything that he touches turns into, or like tastes, turns into chocolate. Like his pencil, a bunch of things just turn into chocolate, and he starts to get like really bothered by it because obviously it's supposed to teach a lesson that like be thankful for what you have, don't be greedy. I don't know. It's supposed to be a lesson for kids, sort of, but also it's just a really fun book, and I really liked it, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars because it's just one that I loved as a kid. The next book that I read was Just Breathe by Dan Brule. This one was a book about mastering the art of breathing and just a bunch of different breathing techniques that you can do. This one I gave out a 5 out of 5 stars because I really did like it, and it really did help me with my breath work because I went to a class like a year or so ago and I really loved it, and it made me feel really great. So highly suggest this book, really good. The next book I read was The Night Visitors by Carol Goodman. This one, I believe I gave a 3 out of 5 stars because the ending was kind of weird for me, but it was overall a really good book. It was a book about a elderly woman who was like a social worker, and she basically like was on call to transport people to a help center or like a homeless shelter or whatever, like somewhere where they could find help. And one day during a snowstorm, this woman and her son are running away from his father, and it's very mysterious. The lady takes them in, and since it's a snowstorm, she takes them to her house instead, and then winds up discovering that the man that they ran away from was found dead. And there's just a whole lot of mystery and like other things that go on, plot twists that happen, but you have to read the book. Obviously I'm not going to spoil it for you, but yes, it was a very good book overall. I did like it. It just had a weird ending for me. The next book I read this month was Strangers in Paradise by Terry Moore. This was kind of like a adultish, a more like new adult graphic novel that was kind of just like funny. It was just like a humorous book about a girl in her like probably early 20s and her relationship with this man who was kind of like a douche to her, and her friendship. And it's a series that carries on, but I only read the first book this month. The next book that I read was Battle Angel Alita by Yukito Kishiro. This was another graphic novel that is a series. You guys have probably heard of Battle Angel Alita. It's basically about a guy who like rebuilds like robots. I just cleaned the litter tray, so the cats are literally like going crazy in the litter boxes, but it's basically about this guy who like rebuilds people, and he finds this girl one day and he like rebuilds her body, and she is rebuilt as like, she's rebuilt with the body of a fighter, so she like fights all these evil villains, and it's really good. I really did enjoy it, and I really want to read the next one, but I just haven't ever found the chance to. The next book that I read was Villette by Charlotte Bronte. This book, I think I gave like 2 out of 5 stars. It was not my favorite. It took me forever to read. If you guys watched some of my past vlogs, you probably saw that it took me a while and I was just like not in the mood for it. It was a good book, but it was just kind of difficult for me to understand at points, and some of the writing was in French and I don't speak French, so it was kind of confusing for me. But overall, it was a pretty good book. It just wasn't really something that I preferred, in classics at least. The next book that I read was Wideacre by Philippa Gregory. This book was so good. You guys know that I love Philippa Gregory, so this one was very good for me. It was about this girl who grew up on, she was like a landowner's daughter of Wideacre, and she like fell in love with the land. It was like her favorite thing ever, and all she wanted was to like be in charge of the land, live on the land, be out in the land. And her brother was like sickly as a child, and then as he got older, he of course took over the land, and it really upset her. So she started to kind of like get closer to her brother, if you know what I mean. But you just have to read it, but it is like basically just about what this girl would do for what she loves, and it's pretty good. It is a series, and I got the second book like a couple weeks ago to read, but Philippa Gregory's books are so long and I just wasn't really in the mood for it. I don't know why. I just wanted to like be able to read something different, so I didn't wind up reading the next book, but I probably will read that some point, maybe next year. I don't know, like in the next year, because I don't know if I'll have an opportunity to read it right now because I'm not really in the mood, but I will definitely read it at some point. The next book I read was You're My Pet, Volume 2 by Yayoi Agawa. I'm just going to briefly go over each one because last month I read the first one and I talked about it, and it's basically about this girl who, she had like a connection with her old dog, and then she meets this homeless boy. She takes him in and she kind of treats him as like her pet. But basically I read the next 3 books. I've read 2 through 4 this month, and it's basically just her kind of becoming closer with him. And she has a boyfriend, but no one, like, except for her friend, knows that she has this pet. She basically just tells her boyfriend that she has a dog, and he never really meets him. But when he has met the pet, she says that it's her cousin. So it's really, like, just a different graphic novel. It is really good, though. I really do enjoy it, and I have been flying through them and will probably read more of them in September. But that's basically the premise of it, is that she just has this like young boy as her pet. I don't know. The next book I read was Little by Edward Carey. This was a book about a young girl who is living with a man who makes like heads. He like designs like faces, and he makes like heads essentially. It was kind of different. She wound up like bouncing around and living with this widow who had a son, and there was a lot going on with that, and then there was also a homeless boy. It was a very strange novel about like this girl living in France, living with this head maker, and her life in France. It was a pretty good book. I think I gave it 3 out of 4 stars, or 3 out of 5 stars. It was just kind of strange. I don't really know how to explain it very well, but if that sounds interesting to you, then definitely read it. The next book I read was The 10th Muse by Catherine Chung. This book was so good. This was about a girl who, she was going to college to be, like a mathematician, which I think is so interesting because I feel like that's kind of just not something like a profession that a lot of people go into, and I think that it's a really interesting like different job concept that they made. But anyway, the book is about a young like Chinese American girl who is kind of confused about who her parents are, and she's kind of been lied to, and just kind of discovering her actual backstory of her life and trying to rise above and get forward with her job in a world where men kind of rule and are in charge, and basically her just defying the system. And I think it's great, but she's also trying to figure out who she is, and I think it's just a really good book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Nature's Cures by Michael Castleman. This book was pretty good. It was basically just a bunch of like natural cures and about like acupuncture, breathing, meditation, yoga, everything like that. Just a pretty straightforward book about like the past of all of these different things and how they can help you. The next book I read was Refresh by Danica Novgorodoff. This was a graphic novel about a bunch of boys who were basically fighting each other, like kind of like wrestling, and all of the struggles that they went through as they waited for their fathers to come home from war. I thought this one was really good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Flight Volume 6 by Kazu Kibushi. This book has a funny story. It's basically an assortment of graphic novels. I've talked about these before because I've read a few of them. But it's an assortment of graphic novel stories that multiple authors have put together into one book. And I'll show you guys what happened to my library book edition that I was reading. So, yeah, I now own this book because my cats freaking destroyed it. Not kidding. They literally, look at that. I don't know if you can really see it. Look at, yeah, they ripped it apart. So I wound up spending like $27 on it when I went to the library and was like, hey, my cats ruined your book. And they were like, okay, you get to keep it, but you have to pay for the book and also like a slight service charge for ruining it. I don't know. It's basically the same thing as if you lost the book. But yeah, so that happened. I was not very happy about that because it wasn't like that great of a book. But I have it now, so that's a fun story. Next book I read was On Cherry Street by Odile Ousley. This book was another one from my childhood that's like an older, like vintage children's book. It was pretty good. It was just a standard like children's book that I loved as a kid, so yeah, it was a good one to reread. The next one I read was The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken, another one that I really liked. This was a reread for me. A lot of you guys have probably heard about The Darkest Mind. It's about a bunch of kids that have these different abilities, and they're kind of like known with their different colors, and there are people who are trying to get rid of them or use their abilities against them, and this girl groups up with a bunch of other kids and they basically try to escape them and get to a safe group, and a bunch of other stuff goes on. But it was a really good book, a really good reread. I want to read the whole series, so that's why I reread this one. But yeah, that's the only one that I read this month. The next 3 books are The Full Metal Alchemist Volume 1 through 3. This is about 2 brothers who are like alchemists, and they basically lost their bodies trying to bring their mother back from the dead, and now it's kind of their like search to find their bodies again as they like beat bad guys. So that's what this one's about. I really like it. And then the last book that I read for the month is Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn. This was actually on my TBR for last month, and I didn't, or no, for Reading Rush, and I didn't wind up getting to it, but I finally read it now. It was a really cute, like, kind of like a middle grade book, or maybe a children's book, I'm not sure, about this girl who was always told these stories by her dad about this old man on the moon who can, like, give you fortune, and she goes to get fortune for her family who works in the fields, and she leaves on this search to go find them. She meets all these different people, and she kind of discovers that that's not all that it's about, and she winds up living a much more prosperous life in the end. I thought it was a really cute book, and I think I gave it like 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah, so that was it. The last book that I'm going to talk about is Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. This one is so good so far. I'm definitely going to finish it today because I only have like 100 some pages left, but this is about a Korean girl who is a fox, and she basically meets this guy, and he sees her while she is a fox, and she has to kind of figure out how to get her spirit back and also save this boy. And yeah, that's it for my August wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed it and are looking forward to seeing my September TBR. I'm so glad that I got as many books read as I did this month, and I can't wait to read more in September. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you have a great day, and yeah, see you in my next video. Bye.